Financial Argument. Follow us on YouTube.
Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we can see that in retail, in manufacturing, in housing, with the credit impulse, which has turned negative, with loan creation, we're seeing so many indicators that the economy is ripping itself apart. I mean, we've never seen anything like this as we've been reporting on the economy. We've been watching the slow deterioration of the economy, but now we're at the point where things have gone to the next level. And we're going to be talking about what Trump is about to do. And many people are taking this the wrong way, and I'll explain why when we get to that section here. But when we see retail, we see that it's imploding on itself. Sears in Canada, well, they're warning that looks like they might not be able to make it in Canada. They might be closing down maybe all their stores, or trying to sell a lot of them. And they don't have the ability to continue operating. It's completely impossible. We see Kellogg's right now, the breakfast food giant. Well, they're laying off a lot more people than they originally thought. And what we're seeing right now is that the total number of layoffs is going to be around 11,000. And in February, the cereal maker announced that it was shifting its distribution model, and it was closing around 39 distribution centers in states all across the country. And these states were Ohio, Tennessee, Texas, North Carolina, New York, and other states where they've been informed that, yeah, you're going to be laid off. And the average number of employees in each one of these facilities ranges anywhere from 250 to 500 people. And we can see right now that things are getting a lot worse than everyone expected. Actually, if we look at the small business sector, we see that things, well, they are not going well at all. According to the Federal Reserve, only 35% of small businesses are profitable, which means 65% of these small businesses are not profitable at all. And we can see right now they are on the verge of going belly up. And we can see why there are many people still living with their parents, because they cannot find jobs. Think about it. Retail imploding, contracting. They're not hiring more people. The restaurant, food service industry, traffic is drying up. People are not hiring like they used to. We see major corporations, distribution centers, manufacturers laying off people, closing centers. This is why 40% of young Americans, that's why they're living with their parents. And by the way, this is the highest percentage in 75 years. This is the recovery, people. 66% of the largest companies in the U.S. that have given estimates of their earnings for the next quarter have issued negative guidance. Right now, what we're looking at is a complete disaster of the economy. Let me put the retail store closures in perspective. They have skyrocketed by 286% this year. 286%. So when we look at this economy and we look at one end to the other, we see it's ripping itself completely apart. And what we're seeing right now is we're starting to see inflation, because the first time in 3 years, core producer prices, they have risen at a faster pace than the Fed's mandated 2% target. And we know this 2% target is completely manipulated. It's to serve the central bank's agenda. And we know if we go to the supermarket, if we go to any other place, we know that the cost of food and products have continually moved up and up and up. A lot of the inflation is being forced into the stock market, and a lot of it's being sent overseas. So when all these dollars come back to the United States, we're going to see inflation. And it's going to be unbelievable when it hits. Now, the latest monthly fund manager survey from Bank of America, well, that's out right now. And continuing the trend noted in previous months, when the number of active managers who said that stocks are overvalued hit the highest nearly in 2 decades, well, the latest version reveals the number of respondents saying that the equities are overvalued, well, it just hit a record high. It surpassed the all-time high set during 1999 bubble. And what we're seeing right now is that 44% of the fund managers now say, yeah, equities, they're overvalued. And this is the highest response on record. So what does this tell us? It tells us that the market makes no sense. Of course it doesn't. It's completely manipulated. They're pushing a button, they're pushing a mouse button, and they can make the market move up, they can market move down. We have the central banks buying up all these tech stocks. They buy a lot more to push the market back up. There's no reality in the market right now. Now, countries, financial institutions, they are starting to realize that this system's coming down. Actually, Goldman Sachs, they're starting to cover Bitcoin. We also see that Russia spoke to the developer of Ethereum, and this is a blockchain technology where they're looking to use this to build infrastructure, and they might even use this to build maybe a national virtual currency. As long as it's not controlled and it's decentralized, it's a sound currency. And will they back this with anything? We don't know. How will this proceed? We don't know. But we can see right now, countries are starting to realize there is value in cryptocurrencies. Now, I believe we're in the very early stages of cryptocurrencies. I believe this is almost like the dot-com type of thing where there's a lot of cryptocurrencies, and eventually what's going to happen is a lot of these cryptocurrencies are going to completely disappear, and we will only have a few of these left. And I think Ethereum is going to be one of them. This is like the building blocks of cryptocurrency, and they can build a lot of different things and use it for many different things. So I think this is going to be very important moving forward. Now, we've been talking about how the central bank is pushing to bring the economy down and how Trump is doing the same exact thing. And we see right now that Trump has laid out his banking rules to overhaul the banks, which will remove a lot of the regulations and the Volcker rule. And a lot of people are out there screaming and yelling, saying, oh my God, this is a terrible thing. Everything's going to crash. Banks will run wild. They'll be able to do whatever they want. Well, let's think about this for a second. We know the central bank right now, they're bringing down the economy. We can see already with their interest rate hikes. If they raise the interest rates this week, it means they accelerated the process. They know what Trump is up to. If you were going to bankrupt someone, let's take his position right now, and let's forget about the government. If you're going to bankrupt a household, would you have regulations on the household? How much you can spend, what you can invest, and what you can do? Because we know for a fact that this economy that we're in and the housing, the household, that there's no way of fixing it. Too much debt, not enough tax receipts coming in, not enough income coming in. There's nothing we can do, and we need to start over. So you know you have to crash the system. What do? You let those individuals spend as much as they possibly can until they go bankrupt. They spend on the credit cards. They keep doing it. He wants the banks to go crazy. He's tricking them into thinking, wow, look what he just did for us. This is going to be incredible. Actually, he's doing the opposite. He's telling everyone that he's making it easier for the banks to do all these things because he wants them to go out there and he wants them to destroy themselves. Think about this for a second. Glass-Steagall was in place since the 30s, and it was removed by, I think it was Clinton. That was in 99. And all of a sudden, the banks went crazy. What did they do? They created subprime securities. They commingled speculative investments with depositors, and no one was safe. And what did it do? It destroyed the banks. But of course, the deep state, the central bank, stepped in and said, no, we need to save these banking systems. We can't let them go. They're too big to fail. This time, it's a little... He's removing all this to have the system go down. Now, of course, the Treasury Secretary, he's all on board with this. Again, Trump is using him. I know a lot of people think, oh, he's part of Goldman Sachs. Of course he is. He needs him in there to use him. Just like he needed Saudi Arabia with the covert story of arms selling to them, he needed as a cover story. He's playing with all these people, and I'm going to show you how he is playing with the central bank. There is a battle right now on who's going to bring down the economy first. And Trump needs to gain the narrative. The central bank wants the narrative, and they want to point the finger at each other. So, according to the Wall Street Journal, we're going to take the Wall Street Journal as reporting the truth. I know that's very hard to do. It's very difficult to do. But they're saying that there was a meeting with Fed Chairman Janet Yellen in the Oval Office. And he was in there with Cohen, and they were talking. And the president said to Yellen, he considered her like himself, a low interest rate person. Now the question is, why would he say that to her? Because he knows that they've been raising the rates. They started raising it before he was actually inaugurated. They raised it while he was president, and they're looking to raise the rates once again. Now, why would he say that, like you, like him, he's a low interest rate person? He wants the central bank to do the opposite of what he's saying, and they will do the opposite because they don't want to go along with what he's saying. He wants them to raise the rates because he knows this will start bringing down the system. He's setting all of this up. He's using reverse psychology. He's pushing the banks to go out and blow these bubbles up, to destroy themselves, and when it does happen, the system goes down. He wants the system to go down. Just like in a household, if someone is not bringing in the income, or maybe loses their job and gets a part-time job, they have this huge amount of debt, you just keep spending until you go bankrupt, and then you start over. The economy cannot be fixed right now. The economy is dead. The central bank, the deep state, the criminal empire, they have destroyed the system. It's non-operational. Everything that he's doing right now, talking about manufacturing, bringing jobs back, this is for after the fact. First, he has to clean house and get rid of what we're in right now. There's going to be a transition period. I'm sure he already has plans laid out on how this is going to work out. And we see right now that in order to do all of this, he needs them to bring the system down. He needs to help them bring the system. And once the system falls apart, then, and only then, can he reinstate Glass-Steagall. He can then take control of the system, maybe back it by gold, maybe use a virtual currency, a cryptocurrency. We don't know as of yet. But we're going to go through this transition period. And this transition period, well, it's going to be a little tough. And it's going to be a period of time where everything that we know is going to change. That currency that you know that's in the bank, your pensions, all these things, well, if the system goes down, they disappear. I mean, they'll use bail-ins, they'll try to save themselves, the banking system will do whatever they possibly can, the central bank will create currency like crazy, but it will go nowhere because the system is going to die. There will be no bailout. And he wants it to die. It has to die. The system cannot continue to operate like this. It was going to crash one way or another. And if they kept it going on even longer, there'd be no middle class. The middle class would be poorer. More wealth would be shifted to the 1%. Even the upper wealthy class would start moving down in ranks and finding it more and more difficult. And eventually what would happen is you would have a two-system type of thing, the 1% and the rest. And we see already that they've tried to cover up everything. They tried to prepare over the years for the coming crash. They thought they'd have the narrative. I'm talking about the central bank, talking about the criminal empire, the deep state. And what they're realizing is that everything around them is starting to fall apart. And there's nothing they can do. And it looks like he's taking the upper hand right now, and he's controlling the situation. He will be controlling what happens from this point on. And you could see he's still pushing out there fake news, because this is all part of the strategy now. It doesn't mean that the corporate media is just going to say, oh, yes, we give. No, they're going to continue on until the very end, until they're all exposed. So we're going to be heading towards this period of time where everyone is going to have to be prepared and ready. We already see load creation in all different parts. Well, it's stalled or it is completely imploding on itself. We see the credit impulse. It's worse off than it was in January. Retail is imploding on itself. Housing is a disaster. All the data is completely manipulated. And the stock market, well, they're just keeping that up with their computer programs, with pushing a button, with central banks around the world keeping certain key stocks up there by purchasing them. And we discussed this before. And it's all coming to an end. And it's going to come down hard.